Welcome to the Ignatius Press podcast. My name is Rose Trabbic, and I'm the publicist for Ignatius Press. And we are thrilled to be joined today with Katie Bogner, who is a lovely Catholic school teacher in Central Illinois. She also is the author of 5 children's books, and she also has a website, Look to Him and Be Radiant, along with an active social media account where she provides awesome resources for parents and teachers. So we're thrilled to have you today. Katie, welcome.
I'm so happy to be with you, Rose.
Great. Well, I just want to start by just giving you some serious accolades here. You are a middle school teacher, 6th to 8th grade for religion. So God bless you. I'm so impressed already.
I love my middle schoolers. They get such a bad rap, but I love them.
Well, I have I have 5 kids right now, a 7th grader and an 8th grader. So if they were at your school, you would have them, and they're awesome. But man, it takes a special person to engage middle schoolers all day long. So and your classroom is behind you, I believe, right?
This is, yes, you get a little corner of it.
It's so pretty. I've seen it on Instagram for years. I mean, we've been sending you review copies of Ignatius books. We've had so many conversations online, but this is the first time we get to chat in person. So that is so fun. And I know that many teachers follow your social media. Is that right?
It is. It's kind of crazy. I still sometimes like to put things out on Instagram or on my website and just pretend like my sisters are going to see it and they're going to like it and it'll be fine. But no, there's a lot of people. I think people are eager for ideas. There's so many great secular teacher accounts that are fun to follow too for inspiration and ideas in other ways. But it is really, really wonderful to have a community of Catholic educators, whether it's a catechist in a parish or someone in a Catholic school, to get some inspiration from, or even those who homeschool or who want to have a little prayer corner in the, in their kitchen for their kids to come home to. So it is wonderful. Say what you will about social media, and there, of course, are lots of drawbacks, but we can use it for really good things too.
Absolutely. And I think, as a mom, that's one of the great things about social media is just connecting with so many different people that have such great ideas, and you can take that and you can use it in your own life or adjust it how you want to. So, I've really enjoyed following you. And we're going to dive into a lot of things today. I want to talk about the Ignatius Book Fairs and how to instill a love of reading in kids. But first of all, with all the book reviews that you do, and you do a lot, what are you looking for when you review a book?
Yeah, you're right, Rose. I have the privilege of, I've reviewed a lot of Catholic books over the years. And then I also, as you can tell, I'm no stranger to
a lot of books
purchasing.
Back there.
Yes, there's a lot of books back there. I really am pretty picky though, even though, if you're watching the video, you can see there's a lot of books in the background. I am really picky. I'm looking for books that are true and that are good and that are beautiful. So primarily kids are, they're very visual in what they're attracted to and how they learn. And so I'm definitely judging it by its cover in the right way, if that makes sense, right? I'm looking for good design. I'm looking for good illustrations. I'm looking for design and illustrations that match the age of the child that it's meant for, that it's not too juvenile or too advanced. But then, of course, I'm looking for it to be authentically Catholic, for it to be true, for it to be easy to understand. So, I could talk about this alone for an hour, but those are really the key things. So I'm looking for is it authentically Catholic and true to what we believe, but is it also meant to be attractive to the child that it was intended for? And so sometimes you can find Catholic books that have really good, true content, but the design is just lacking. So it's not going to be attractive. A kid is not going to pick it up, or they won't be able to navigate it well, or vice versa. Maybe the design is great and the illustrations are beautiful, but the content falls short or isn't really true to what we believe as Catholics. So I'm always looking for those primary things, but lots of other stuff too.
Right. This could be a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
And same with the Ignatius Book Fairs when we're selecting our books, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Those are also what we're looking for. And I love how you said that, you do judge a book by its cover, because so do we. Because if a kid is not going to be engaged by the cover, they're not going to be interested in reading it. And sometimes you can, maybe especially in some of the old fashioned books that if they just give it a chance, they're going to like it. And you can maybe do that sometimes, but you can't have all your books like that. It is the presentation, the artwork is so important to draw kids in.
Yep, they have to be willing to pick it up. Like sometimes there are resources that maybe a parent reads or it's something that's used by the family. So it doesn't mean that it's all bad. But when it
Right.
comes to getting a kid to pull a book off of the shelf and to actually read it and therefore to encounter the truth that is within, you
Mhm.
have to have the whole package. You got to have all of it.
Absolutely. How did you get into books? Like, is this something that, like, did you grow up reading books? Is it something that you cultivated as an adult? Like, where did this love of books come from?
Gosh, I mean, I was a big reader as a kid. I read tons and tons. So I can look back to my own elementary school teachers who instilled that love of reading in me. But I was actually a public school kid, like all the way through pre-K through college. And then I taught in public school for a few years and taught literature. So while I wasn't like formulating that kind of like worldview at the time of what I was looking for, when I was picking books for my own classroom or what we were going to use for novel studies, I was looking for things that had those. While it wasn't a Catholic school, I could still look for things that like upheld virtue and upheld the fight between good and evil and were well
Mm.
written. I was already looking for those things. And then when I was volunteering in my parish at the time as a DRE, and then when I switched from public education to a Catholic school, I wanted to fill my library with good Catholic books, right? Well, that was 15 years ago. And unfortunately, a lot of what I encountered, which of course there wasn't as much online, like also our Catholic publishers, Ignatius Press included, have been just killing it with like Catholic book publication lately. So 15 years ago, I was kind of disappointed, honestly, with what I was finding. And it was either the content was true, but the design was awful,
Right.
or the
Right.
design and illustrations were okay, but the content wasn't authentically Catholic. So I was just sort of like, so I think because I was already looking for it, it made me like pay attention. And so
Mm.
I was attentive when like new books came out. And of course, social media was kind of starting to grow, the Catholic blogosphere and everything. And so I was paying attention when new books were coming out. And then I had the opportunity to kind of start reviewing them, and it sort of spiraled from there. So I would share reviews on social media, and then I would get, hear about more new books from publishers. So now I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on what is out there. I've curated a lot of book lists on my blog, which
Mm.
we maybe can talk about too. That's another whole
Another whole topic.
another whole topic, because I want parents and teachers and catechists to be able to find the books that they're looking for whether it's a topic they want to explore in their classroom or it's a
Mhm.
saint their kid is like super fascinated with and they want to find a good book for them. I want to help make that easier. And so I've curated these lists that are by theme and topic and saints and all of that kind of stuff so that people can easily find them kind of all in one place.
Right. And again, that website you have is looktohimandberadiant.com. So if people want to access your book list, that's where they go.
They're all there and it's all free. So
Yes. And, and it's so funny you're saying that about, you're right. 15, 20 years ago, there was not a lot. I mean, growing up, I won't say the name, but a book collection by a popular and well-meaning Catholic priest that you probably know who I'm talking about, but like that was kind of it. And they were all about the saints. And like, yeah, I look back and I'm like, oh boy, like we have come a
we've
long
come a long
way in
way.
Catholic
Yeah.
books. And yeah, and so I think, the Ignatius Magnificat line started just about 15, 16 years ago. It was right around the time that I had my first child. And I remember when I got the first shipment and I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And at Ignatius Press, we work with, like I said, the Magnificat company, and they have all these incredible European illustrators. And that is really, what we do a lot of, somewhat some editing and rewriting as it's translated into English, but the art is so beautiful and the
It
content
is.
is so beautiful. So that was really exciting when we first started getting those. I was like, these are not the Catholic books of my youth.
No,
So
they're beautiful. And
thank you.
the variety of styles of illustrations. And again, I know that people who are just listening to the podcast, like I'm not holding up books to see, but like that is one thing that I always know when I'm going to, like, if I get an envelope in the mail and it has an Ignatius Press or a Magnificat book in it, I know it's going to be beautiful. I know it's going to be well bound, like the actual
Right.
quality of the book, like the
That's
cover,
important.
the paper is going to be high quality, which of course, as a teacher, that really matters to me because it's got to last or it's, not worthwhile. So, and then of course, I know that the content is trustworthy. So I look forward to all of those things when I
Well,
see a
we will
new.
keep sending them your way. Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you, as a teacher, a lot of times you hear people say, I mean, this is just, you see studies about this, you see articles about us that like reading is a huge indicator of academic success. Do you see a difference in your classroom with kids who read a lot and read good books?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, just because it's a universal skill. So I teach religion or faith full time. Like that's my full time position. But so I'm not explicitly teaching reading. But of course, in order for a student to be successful in my classroom, they need to be able to read. And so I can see it carry over to the kids who have like this natural curiosity, like they have a
Mm,
natural inclination to read. They're in the habit of reading. So it's not always about academic success or their, what's their words per minute rate or whatever it might be.
right.
It's have they been raised as a reader? Have they been
Mhm.
like when they have spare time? I mean, I literally have like 1,000 Catholic books in my classroom. Okay. So when they have spare time, I like kind of teach them and train them like, oh, you're done. You got 15 minutes. Hey, here's this entire basket of Saint books for the month coming up or whatever it might be. Are they inclined to go and pick one of those up and flip through it and read it? Or is that like pulling teeth for them? Do they
Right.
have a natural curiosity that if they have a question, they actually want to pursue and try to find it and
Mm,
know how to do that in a book? Like they have the skill set to navigate a book. So yes, of course, I see that that carries over. But the beautiful thing is that it's not necessarily about like what level they're reading at. It sometimes
mm.
has to do more with those habits of reading that have been, whether it's been built in by their families or skills a teacher has built up in them. Does that make sense? That you don't have to
Absolutely.
be a
Yeah,
super high reader to benefit from that.
right.
And I see that in my classroom, and I know that carries over. You see that in history, you see that in science, you see that in writing. It carries over to all of their classes.
That's so interesting what you say about curiosity and then also the skills to know just to go back to reading. I remember when one of my kids was in sixth grade, their teacher told me that she could tell immediately kids that had a lot of screens and particularly
Mm,
phones and social media because there was just a complete difference in how they just their like you said, the curiosity, the willingness to go and find an answer in the book, and also like their focus and concentration. And
mhm.
that really stuck with me because, we're living in this technological world where like kids are just given screens from a young age. And I think like there's a lot of side effects to kids being on screens. But what I also think a lot of people don't talk about is like that they just don't have the space to cultivate wonder, like the
Mm.
boredom and the bit of like, I don't have anything to do. I'm going to go outside or I'm going to go pick up a book. Or I heard about someone talking about this subject, like, and I'm going to go find it in my children's encyclopedia because like the magnetic draw of devices doesn't actually leave you space to cultivate that love of other activities, including reading.
Yeah,
So
you're totally
yeah,
right. I
it
mean,
really
especially
stuck
that
with me.
that
Yeah.
like idea of a little bit of boredom. And
Right.
again, you and I can talk about how like if we had a question, we would be like, "Oh, I'm just going to Google it real quick." Like
Right.
we use it as a tool, right? But that's like
Right.
a method that then that you've had this happen before, I'm sure, where you Google it, but then that leads to an article and then you read the whole article.
Right.
And then you may be like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Has this person written anything else?" And then you find out, "Oh, they're an author of a book. I'm going to order that book and I want to read it." Like it's like this rabbit trail.
Mhm.
And so kids, unfortunately, they're not using their screens like that. They're using them,
Mhm.
it's a totally different, like the way that their brain is firing is not down that path of curiosity. And
Right.
so I do love, like, trust me, I mean, like just out of sight over here, I have a whole rack of, Chromebooks. Like we use
Right.
technology here
We
too.
have
And there's a
to in
smart
some
board
point.
over this way.
Mhm.
They need to know how to use it as a tool. But I
Mhm.
also am trying to surround them with all of these good books so that they're attracted to pick them up and follow those rabbit trails, right, of
I love
curiosity.
that.
And I think
Mhm.
that so it's not that technology is bad, it's that
Right.
maybe parents finding a balance of how to use it and allowing them to have both. Have the technology, learn how to use it appropriately, but also have time. Do things with their hands, go outside, be
Right.
bored, do things with friends and their siblings, etc. And also to be surrounded by good books too.
Right. Absolutely. Do you have any advice for parents who have kids who are reluctant readers? That's like
Mm.
we get asked that a lot, and I'm wondering, as a teacher, what your advice would be for that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I don't explicitly teach reading anymore, but I did for a long, long time. That was my main job before I started this one. And so, some things that I always suggested was that we tend to be willing to work hard to learn something that we're really interested in. So, sometimes
Mm,
it's not so much about the level of a book as it is the topic of the book. And
Right.
so the first thing I would say is like, what is that child interested in? And then can you put resources in their hands and let them explore without pressure? So like my nephew, who I wouldn't say he's gone through some phases. He's not a reluctant reader, but he definitely prefers nonfiction to fiction. Right now, he is obsessed with sharks, like anything sharks.
I
And
have
I
a
took
kid
him
like that too.
uh-huh. I took him to the library over the summer. It's a real tiny, small town community library. And he like immediately watched. And I was so proud of him, very grown up, and asked the librarian if there are any books about sharks. So she, of course, takes him over to the kids section and we pull out these like 2 books about the ocean. And that was not enough for him because they only had like 1 page each. So I went over to the adult section and found this cool like ocean encyclopedia that was well above his reading level. But because he is so fascinated by that topic, he sat down and he read caption by caption and chunk by chunk and he was interested and able to read it because he had the desire to. So first tip would be to find, like, if a kid has a particular interest, to try to run with that.
Right.
The second thing is to not be afraid of other formats. So graphic novels get a really bad rap, and I want to like be here to like uphold them as a tool that is good for kids. Especially, I mean, like speaking of Ignatius Press books, like the graphic novel, like I'm trying, help me out, Rose. What do you guys
The
call your
Lupio
scripture ones?
series, we have,
Yeah.
that's one of our we have a lot of graphic novels actually, but that's our probably,
Yeah, and your
most well-known.
illustrated children's Bible, like
Illustrated
those.
Children's Bible, yes,
Yeah.
is another great one. We have one on Carlo Acutis that's also, a graphic novel that's really great. Swiss Guards. I mean, now you're getting my juices going now. I'm starting to remember all the titles here. but yeah, I totally agree with you. And I also, thought kind of looked down on graphic novels for some time because my oldest was like a huge reader, like taught herself to read when she was before kindergarten. Like I was like, oh, good job, me. Well, no, it actually wasn't. It was just her. And then I had a couple other kids after that, particularly my next one that actually kind of struggled to get into reading. And it was absolutely comic books and graphic novels that helped, I would say, my next 3 kids really become readers. And we, like, my sons were really into the Tintin series. There's like 30 of those books. They just one after another just devoured them. And again, these are not, books that we think of when we want to get kids into reading, but man, did it work. And one of the concerns I had was that they wouldn't jump into chapter books after that, but that is just completely not what happened. They went right to chapter books and, they still enjoy a comic book or a graphic novel, but they read a lot of variety. So I am an absolute believer on that also.
They can sometimes be a bridge. They can help them get from, we like support like early readers so much with like, like low amounts of text, tons of illustrations. They're really bright and fun and colorful. And then we hand them these big chapter books, and that can be really intimidating and hard to keep their attention and hard to understand. And so also graphic novels require a lot of nonfiction text skills to navigate.
Right.
They also require a lot of, often require a lot of understanding of like interpersonal, like nonverbal communication, because you're looking at facial expressions. You're trying to read what's happening in the picture. And so honestly, like, now we can go into a whole conversation about boys versus girls, but sometimes boys react really well with that nonfiction format, even if the content of the graphic novel is fiction. Does that kind of make sense? That they get all of those
found
cues.
That to be the case with my boys for sure.
Which is why I love that you guys and other Catholic publishers have been using that format to teach the faith, whether it's a fictional story like Lupio or the Illustrated Bible or telling the lives of the saints, because I might not be able to get one of my 6th graders to make it all the way through a chapter book. Here's 12 chapters on the life of Carlo Acutis, right? But they're going to sit down and they're going to read that graphic novel. They're going to do it in less time, and they're going to know the main facts about his life and have, like we were talking about, that wonder and curiosity and want to know more. So I love them. They're like a gateway.
Well, that is great. And also, in addition to the novels, the graphic novels that I mentioned from Ignatius Press, we are also carrying Voyage comic books.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Those are great.
Well done.
They're so well done. We did a whole podcast interview with them. And not only do we have those at our website, ignatius.com, but we also carry them at the Ignatius Book Fairs. So I'd love to transition into talking a little bit about our book fairs with you. We started the Ignatius Book Fairs in the fall of 2023. And since we started, we have done over 450 book fairs all over the United States, almost all at Catholic schools. And it's just been so
It's
fun
crazy
to
and
watch
wonderful.
those unfold. And we have many more scheduled for this upcoming year. So we have really exploded with growth. So we carry your book at our in-person book fair. So if you go to an Ignatius Book Fair at a Catholic school, you will see Katie's books on the table. In the fall, we have all about Advent and Christmas. And in the spring, we have all about Lent and Easter. So I would love it if you could share with people a little bit about those books. And I believe we're going to put some pictures up on the screen later so people can see a little bit of the insides.
Awesome. Yeah. So okay, so those two books, they're beautifully illustrated by Sherry Van Vranken, who your listeners may be familiar with. She's the lady behind Catholic Paper Goods. She's illustrated
Oh, yes.
like 400 some saints. So once
They're
you see her
beautiful.
art, you are like,
Right.
oh yeah, I do know who she is. So
Yes.
she has a wonderful business where she has like an Etsy shop where she has printables for Catholic education. They're wonderful. So the original idea for the book kind of came about as we were talking about, my editor and I we're discussing coming up with something that was not just an Advent devotional, because there fortunately are usually there are quite a few of those every year, whether it's a
Right.
new like an annual one or the other perpetual ones, or there's great books about the Jesse tree, or there's a book with like Advent wreath prayers and blessings. But there really wasn't a good book that just explained why we do what we do during Advent. Like, what's the story behind it? How does it fit in with the liturgical year? How does it prepare us for Christmas? And then also, what happens after Christmas? Because it's not just Jesus is born and then whew, we're done, you know?
Right.
So the book kind of evolved into a kind of a combination of sort of like a kid's encyclopedia is the wrong word because it's not like an alphabetical order. It kind of goes through in these really short, like 2 or 3 page chapters per se that explain an aspect of Advent or Christmas. But it does it with tons of little spot illustrations and sidebars and captions. And it's not dated. It's not meant to be like read because everyone knows during Advent how hard it is to do a dated thing in
Oh
December,
my
right?
gosh.
It's crazy. Okay.
Yes.
It's more the why. It's more the why. What are we doing and why? And so it's really great because a family, if you know you're getting ready to light the Advent wreath the first week, you can sit down and read a little about the history of the Advent wreath and the meaning of its symbols. But then if a kiddo is curious about something else, you can skip ahead to that section and whether they read it on their own or read it as a family. And then all about Lent and Holy Week is the exact same companion, same illustrator, same setup, that everything about them matches. But of course, that goes through all of the beautiful stories of Lent and why we have Lent, how it connects to, I mean, goodness, you know, all of the 40 days stories in the Bible and how it connects to Jesus's time in the desert. Goes through prayer and fasting and almsgiving. And then Holy Week. Oh my goodness. I mean, Holy Week could have been its own book, but we fit it
Right.
in there. So there's like an overview of Holy Week, and then each day of Holy Week has its own section and talks about what happened that day and leads to Jesus's resurrection and Easter. So we packed a lot of content into the books, but it's all in bite-sized pieces.
Well, that is great. And so the title of the second book, I misspoke. I called it All About Lent and Easter, but it's actually All About Lent and Holy Week. And you know, how much Easter does it have, if you can remind me at the end? Like, is there another book coming out all about Easter
Well,
and
it's funny you
Pentecost
asked
and all
that, Rose. Yeah. Because that's what, so we originally, the original title, like when the pitch committee, you know, from my publisher, they were like, oh, of course it's going to be all about Lent and Easter. And I'm like, well, are you going to let me talk about all 50 days? Because I don't think we have enough pages for that. So it ends with the resurrection. So everything in the book leads to the resurrection. It's all pointing to that. And that's what, like, connecting the liturgical seasons is really important to me. So there's even some sections in the Advent book that talk about connections to Lent, and then sections in the Lent book that connect to Advent to show the similarities in the seasons. And so then the idea is that then, like, it's not coming out anytime soon. So I don't think I'm giving anything away. But the plan is to have another book that does go through the season of Easter, and because there's so many stories, right? So many stories. And then talk about Ascension and Pentecost and then the ministry of the apostles. So that's a little bit down the road, but that's the
Well,
plan.
I'll look forward to seeing that at some point in the future. We have so many great Catholic books at the Ignatius Book Fair. So we have obviously the Ignatius Magnificat line, which is done by Ignatius Press, but we also carry a lot of other books from other Catholic publishers, like your book. And when we were selecting books, we really wanted to be collaborative. We wanted to find just the best Catholic books out there. So we're definitely thrilled to have your books there. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about some of your favorite Ignatius Magnificat books that, most of these are at our book fair or at least available online. But do you have any favorites from the Ignatius Magnificat line?
I mean, it would be like super difficult to choose favorites, but I knew you were going to ask me something like this. So I'm going to stick with like some of my favorites when I like look at them are your beautifully illustrated children's books. Like I know we
Ugh.
already mentioned like the illustrated Bible and all of those, but I'm going to pick two that fit in with more my middle school age that I spend so much
Mm.
time with. So the first one is your Vision series,
Right. Love
which
those.
is, I mean, how many are you up to now? Are there like 40 of them maybe?
Close to 40, I believe.
Okay.
And we're expanding the series. So we're now we're adding new, more modern saints and even Catholic figures. We have one coming out about J.R.R. Tolkien this fall.
Ooh,
So,
cool.
even just like influential
Yeah.
Catholics of modern times. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a
I
lot.
love that. Well, so, I mean, obviously the saints are a huge part of just our, kind of perpetual curriculum in my school. And so whether it's a student who is curious about something, whether it's in both of our ELA classes, they write a biography at some point, like write an essay or report on a saint. And I love it. Their teachers make them use actual physical sources, print sources,
Yay.
not just the internet. And so
Yes.
they're always coming to me looking for a physical book. So it's really fun to let them flip through those. And because there's so many, and because they're not just like, I know there's one about St. Francis and St. Clair, but there's also one about Blessed Miriam of, I can't even think of her last name right now.
Right.
Like,
Right. That's one of the newer titles.
yeah.
And
And
I don't
so
know how to pronounce it
I
either.
don't,
So
but the idea is that it's not just your typical, it's not just Patrick and Francis. And you have
right.
quite a variety of some of like the classic, well-loved saints, but also some more modern saints or lesser known saints for them to learn about. So I love those. I also think they're really readable. They're like approachable for a middle schooler because they're told in kind of that like biographical narrative
Right.
format where it's a
Right.
story, not just like a dry report with facts and dates. So I love that series,
Right.
and I want you to keep adding as many books as
We
possible
we
to it.
are, yeah. One of my favorite ones we just added recently is a story of Hugh O'Flaherty, the priest. If you've seen the movie The
I've got
Scarlet and
that
the
one.
Black, which
Hmm.
I grew up watching. It's just I think it's one of the best movies ever made.
Mm.
And when that book came out as part of the New Vision series, even though he's not a saint yet, but
Hmm.
an influential heroic Catholic, I was so excited. So yeah, you're right. We're adding more people, and keep your eyes peeled as we keep on adding. But it's a great series, and it's about for ages 9 and up, so perfect for middle schoolers. But I will say I actually enjoy reading them myself. And I actually grew up reading the Vision book series as a kid,
Oh, that's so
way
fun.
before I had even thought of working for Ignatius Press. So, it's a great series. It has longevity, and
Hmm.
I think it's just one that kids love, like you say. So,
Yeah. And then I also love that you have been working on adding more to your fiction titles. I think we've
yes,
chatted via email
yes,
about, and it's really important to me to find good fiction to put in the hands of my kids, whether that's like classic literature or just well-written modern literature. But I'm always so happy when I find a well-written novel that has
Mm,
Catholic themes in it, that has Catholic
right,
characters in it, that
right,
it's not like preachy, that it's just like
right.
natural. And
Yes,
so the My Family and Other Skaters
I
series,
love that series.
I've I read that to review it because I'm always like, I'm gonna read it before I
Right,
share it. But I read that in like one sitting, which isn't hard. I mean, it's a
right,
middle school chapter book. And
mhm,
I'm not ashamed to like I cried at the end of it because I
right.
was
It's so
so
good.
moved by
Yeah.
the story.
Mhm.
And that was not what I expected. I also love that it was a modern family. It wasn't set back in time. It felt very real, like the busy life of a large Catholic family with sports schedules and dinner and, family conflict. It felt
Right,
like my students' lives. But then
right.
there's like this like lovely like undercurrent, like this like, background story that I don't want to give anything away that just like drove home like Catholic values and virtue
Mhm.
and forgiveness and mercy. And I like recommend that one to my students all the time.
Well, I'm so glad. And that is one, the Skater series that we carry at our book fairs, along with like the In the Shadows of Rome series. And we have more. Actually, you're going to be happy when you get our fall books, because we have a new series that we just started publishing. And again, I love the fact that you talk about that these are not preachy stories.
No.
Like, they have Catholic values. Like, for example, in the Skater family, there's nothing preachy about it, but you learn through the story that, this is a big Catholic family with 6 kids, and they love family life, and they love their siblings, and they have a lot of scrapes and adventures, but at the end there's just a lot of love to go around. And that is so important. At Ignatius Press, we have for many years published many novels for adults and kids. And there is a website, ignatiusnovels.com. And if you're listening to this before the end of August 2025, we have a great summer of novels going on right now with a really great discount code that we will drop in the comments. But that's a great resource. And at the Ignatius Novels page, there's a whole kids section for those ages, and we have more planned. So it's very exciting. Yeah. So
Yeah, and
thank you.
just one more
Yeah.
thing to say about that. Just
Yeah.
like you mentioned, like they're not preachy. It doesn't feel like it has an agenda, because just like kids will judge a book by the cover, they will also judge a faith book by like how
Right.
overt the
Right.
the message is, if that makes
Right.
sense. Like if they feel like they're being like sold a story, or like oh, this is just like going to teach me a lesson or something, like
Uh-huh.
it doesn't feel genuine. And
Right.
so that's what I love
Exactly.
about like the Shadows of Rome. Like it's a story. Like that one is like super, it compels you, it pulls you in, because it's like
Right.
high adventure and mysterious. But again, along the way, like the characters make mistakes and they learn about forgiveness and they learn about growth and virtue. And so that's what is so well done about those. And that's like, I challenge like authors who are interested in writing Catholic fiction. That's really important. Write a good story that
Right.
also has Catholic characters, Catholic values, the battle between good and evil. Don't set out to write, well, I'm going to write a story that teaches this lesson. Like,
Right.
don't start with that.
Just don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's important when we're looking at our novels for adults too. We have over 100 novels written for Catholic fiction for adults. Again, at ignatiusnovels.com, you can check them all out. But is that they're not meant to be. Some of them have more overt Catholic themes, but that is a very important thing that you just hit on. It's not about I'm writing this to teach a lesson. It's we're writing a good story, and that is going to have, like you said, truth, goodness, and beauty in it, and that is going to compel our readers to appreciate and love the novel. So that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. So that's a great transition into, let's talk a little bit about some of our favorite non-Catholic books for kids. At the Ignatius Book Fairs, about 30% of the books that we carry are Catholic or Christian. And then about 70% of the books are just secular. We call them like secular wholesome books. We fully vet every book that we send, and that's on our website. That is our promise to parents and
So
teachers,
important.
because
Thank
it
you
is,
for doing that.
yeah,
It is
it is
hard.
so hard. I mean, especially when you have kids that just read like crazy, there's no way that you can keep up and pre-read everything that they read. So that is our promise. We have several people who read them, and we just make sure that all the content is at least not contrary to the Christian worldview. Because as we know, there are national secular book fair companies who have really gone off the rails in this area. And unfortunately, there a lot of Catholic schools for many years have not had much of an alternative. And that's why we've launched the Ignatius Book Fairs. We've done, like I said, many at Catholic schools. We're also actually branching out into private schools and public schools that are not Catholic. So Christian schools, charter schools. And this is so important that we have this selection of wholesome, non-religious books for people that also tell a good story. And like you said, the battle between good and evil, forgiveness, virtue. So what are some of your, I'm curious to know, what are Katie's favorite books in, like what's your favorite series?
I mean,
For
this
that.
is another like
It is a total another podcast.
yeah, absolutely impossible task to talk about. So I'm like just like Little House on the Prairie was my favorite series growing up.
Yeah.
Not the show, the books, the
Right, right.
authentic true books. Yes,
Yes,
of course.
yes.
So I like always love recommending those to like younger students, not particularly my middle schoolers. But then when I was teaching literature, like some of my favorites were Esperanza Rising, Holes, My Side of the Mountain, and some of the other adventure, like Jean Craighead George adventure books. Like, so those are not quite, they're kind of like modern classics. They're not
Right.
necessarily ones that are like, they're not brand new. But I just have to, I'm going to circle back a second, Rose. I'm just so, so grateful as a teacher that like when I go on your website and I like look at those books, I know that they have been vetted, because it is so hard to keep up
Yes.
with new books
Right.
that are being published. All I get parents who will email me and be like, I cannot keep up with my kids, and because they're reading
Right.
so fast.
Right.
Like, have you heard of this? Do you know this author? Do you know this, etc.? So, and I don't mean to be, we don't need to go into like the dark side of this, but it's just so tricky because even when like, the first 4 books in a series are okay, book
Right.
5
Right.
might not be. And
Right.
you never want to, there's a balance between having kids be, in the world but not of it. And like, having good talking conversations, going through different things and having as a parent and like helping a kid understand what's going on, etc. But you never want that to come about like as a be blindsided by it, especially
Right.
in a book that the kid may not even realize what they're absorbing. So
Right.
I appreciate so much that you're finding like really great classics like to in beautiful formats so they're attractive for kids to pick up because I know you've got some good classics on your list.
Yes,
But
we
then
do.
also just good modern novels for for kids to pick up. I love that.
Yeah, I one of the things I've been pleasantly surprised by as I curate these book selections for our book fairs is how many really great recent books there are out for kids by secular publishers. It kind of gets a bad rap, and when you're sifting through, I mean, there's a lot of junk, but
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of books, and so like you said, in addition to having the Catholic books, and then the classics, we
Mhm.
also have been able to find a lot of more fresh books, new books that people have never seen before because they just came out. And we try to find things that are not, we have popular books. We also try to find like some hidden gems that like
Yeah.
you wouldn't find at like, Barnes and Nobles, for example. Like, and so it's been really fun. And yeah, vetting those books, we do have a couple people that help. We have a great intern that helps us, but we do read, someone from our team reads every word. And of course, if something was to slip through the cracks at some point and it was brought to our attention, that book would be certainly removed. But our goal is really that we that you can just completely trust what we're reading, what we have at our book fairs. And yeah, that is a huge, I think, blessing to teachers and parents.
Oh yeah.
um
Yeah. You send
yeah.
in the, the $20 for the book fair and your
Yeah.
kid comes home with something, that it's going to be good. Like
Yes,
that's so
exactly.
wonderful.
Exactly. And actually my own kids also help me a little bit because they are a little bit older, so sometimes I'll give it like, "What do you think of this?" Like, I have a boy and a girl in middle school, and it's great.
Perfect.
And they're very much like, "Ooh, that wasn't cool," or like,
Mhm.
"No one's gonna want to read that, mom." Like, that's not interesting. So I'm like,
Get
"Oh
their
man,
good
I really
honest
like that one."
feedback.
Well, they're
Yeah.
so honest. We're brutally honest. So it's great to have also some like test subjects of kids at those ages. And yeah, it's just been really fun to work on those. And I'm also wondering, as a teacher, if you have any questions about the Ignatius Book Fairs.
Oh, yes, I have so many. So,
Ask away.
as someone who has been in, several different schools, both public and Catholic, you're right. There haven't been a ton of alternatives for us until recently. And so, like, if a teacher or a principal or even a parent is listening to this, and I know you said you've grown a ton over the past couple of years and have more growth
Yes.
ahead of you. So, what would be the process for someone to like start, whether like to get an Ignatius Press Book Fair booked at their school? What does that process look like?
Well, that is a great question. It's very easy. You just go to our website, ignatiusbookfairs.com, and we'll drop that below in the comments too. And you just fill out an inquiry form, and then you'll get on our email list. There's a whole process by which you get sent like the frequently asked questions. And then a member from our sales team will reach out and try to schedule a call if that's the next step, if there's interest there. So yeah, there's our sales team is great and they're very willing to answer any questions. It's a big, I would say like some people might feel like it might be a little bit of a gamble to go from, a
Mm,
nationally known book fair, big company to something newer and smaller. But we have a great team that can help walk them through every step of the way. And then
that's
once
awesome.
someone books a book fair, our operations team is also fantastic. They will, just kind of hold your hand through the process, especially if it's your first time. They're there to answer any questions. And we also have like a lot of training videos developed and information to help run a successful book fair.
Again, every Catholic parent, even like parish programs and teachers know that like there's a lot of fundraisers out there, but this is a totally different way because there's so many benefits. You're getting good books in the hands of the students and they take those home because that's where you want them to be, right? You want them to be on their shelf, even if they're not going to read it right away, which they might. it's on the shelf. You never know when they're going to pick it up. You never know when it will go past to, a younger sibling. Like, you want those good books in their homes. But then the flip side of that is that it also benefits the school as a whole by building up the library, adding books in their classrooms, like the whole system. It's so mutually beneficial.
Well, Katie, we could obviously go on for like hours upon hours.
Yes, we could. I think we
especially
could.
talking about our great books that we love. But I'm just so grateful that you've come on today. And I want to know if there's any projects, anything coming out down the road that you can share, or is it top secret, or anything else you want to tell our viewers?
I don't think I have anything top secret, but I don't have anything that's coming out super soon, so I don't want to like pitch things. So I definitely am like, books are always in the works, which is always fun. Like, my staff, like, all of the books I've written, I usually write them over summer break, like, which
Right.
that obviously
So
makes
you just
sense in the
had
life
some
of a
good stuff
teacher.
happen, right?
I just had some good things happen. And so it's funny to be like, so what did you do over the summer, Miss Bogner? What's the next book? Like, it's kind of funny. So nothing I can talk about super soon. One cool thing that's kind of happening right now, how we just wrapped up the National Eucharistic Revival, like, we had our 3 years. So even though that's kind of over, there's still some work going on with the National Eucharistic Revival team, and then the blog and everything. So I've been creating children's content for them for the whole time.
Oh, wow.
And we had a project that we were really excited about, and it just didn't wrap up, if that makes sense. And we also added to it. So every month, there's an adult article being written by Sister Alicia Torres. So if you're familiar with her, she's writing an adult version, and I'm creating this like kids newsletter that's about having a Eucharistic worldview, which sounds super fancy, but it's really just seeing like the work of the Lord, and like through the gift of the Eucharist in your everyday life, in meals, and in the way that we move throughout our day, and in like helping someone else. And so Sister Alicia, she writes the beautiful theology behind it, and then I just make like a practical kids article.
That sounds really cool. Where can people find that?
So probably the easiest way would be to go to like the National Eucharistic Revival website, and then there's like a blog feature. Like, that's probably the fastest way to get there. Like, I think like it's not like its own, it's not its own website or anything like that. But every month there's a new kind of like, it's like a kid's newsletter would be the best way to describe it, that has that one like Eucharistic worldview, like about, like, for example, one of them is about meals. So there's like a little article that kind of explains it. And then there's some puzzles. And then there's always a saint featured, and then like a Bible word scramble. So it's very interactive, real easy to print out and like, fill 15 minutes before dinner, while you're trying to cook and get stuff on the table, or for teachers to use in their classroom. So that's just been a really cool ongoing project that has been fun to work together on.
Well, that sounds great. I'm definitely going to be checking that out. And again, I just really encourage anybody who is interested in learning more about good books and great ways to get your kids excited about the faith to check out Katie's work. Again, on her website, looktohimandberadiant.com, or follow her on social media. And what are your handles there, Katie, on social media?
I'm most active on Instagram, and I'm Catherine.Bogner there. So KATHERINE.BOGNER.
Fantastic. Well, it was great to talk to you today. We'll
much
have
fun,
to do
Rose.
this again, to talk more about books. But we're just so grateful that you came on today. Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, and thank you for all the good work you're doing at Ignatius Press, too.
Thank you.